probably move on to the third topic of the day.
Third topic of the day.
Which is
3D, get the table.
Monster Hunter. So here's the deal, Jared. I don't know much about Monster Hunter. I know it's a big deal. I know in Japan it's gigantic. I know everyone plays it. I have absolutely no idea about this game. I did one time I had to help someone at IGN review it, so I like captured the video for them, so I saw a bit of the gameplay. It's never grabbed my attention too much. Pitch it to me, explain it to me. What? Don't make that. What are you wanting me, Greg?
Well, it never grabbed your attention? Fun co-op play, cooking your own meat, got all these cats that cook for you.
Yeah, you have cats
more cats.
Yeah, you have cats. Do you play, Greg?
I used to. Like back in the day, IGN reviewed everything.
Okay.
Which meant that games were dumped on your desk and they said review this. And it didn't matter if you knew nothing about it. So yeah, I did 2 or 3 PSP Monster Hunters back in the day?
No, a bunch of PSP. Did you ever do the original PS2 one? Or
No.
So
I just did the portable ones. Tried to get into 4 when it came to Wii with Charles, and it didn't work.
Did you develop the claw? Did you get the claw down?
The claw, how to play on my PS. Of course I did.
Yeah, okay.
That was like the first thing. I remember when Alicia from Capcom came over. And she sat down with her imported Monster Hunter to run me through a demo, and she had like a million things, and that was how. Yeah, here's how you play, and this is how you run it, and this is what you do, and you drop your paintball on him and do this and run over there. I enjoyed it, but it was one of those things that once it wasn't my job, I didn't want to play anymore.
Yeah, Monster Hunter. First off, is a wonderful game. Second, is a hand deformation simulator up until now. Yeah, because to play it on PSP, you had to get the camera controls right. You had to hold your hand in this kind of this absurd position where you were trying to reach the face buttons and at the same time reach over here on the shoulder. And it was just the PSP button layout did not fit Monster Hunter well, but they put it on there anyway. I was living in Japan when Monster Hunter was reaching its zenith, when Monster Hunter Mania seized Japan. Let's talk about this first. Okay. I am not a Monster Hunter expert. I am a Monster Hunter player. I enjoy the game. There are people out there. This is a game with depths of deepness beyond the depths of deepness. There's just layers and layers and layers and layers of Monster Hunter.
This is like if you've met people who only play WoW, that only play Destiny, whatever. This is that where you just have these people who have invested hundreds upon thousands of hours.
Yeah. There's the kind of mechanical depth that you find in the best fighting games. Exponentially cubed. That's what's going on in a Monster Hunter game, but it doesn't look like it when you're watching. You figure that as you're playing. But in Japan, this was as big as any video game has ever gotten anywhere. This was, dare I say, at the level of Super Mario Brothers Mania in '85 big in Japan. This is Dragon Quest in Japan big. And this Monster Hunter is universally recognized by the population. I would get on a train and you always knew the Monster Hunter players. People carried PSPs there all the time when I lived there. But you would always know the Monster Hunter players. They'd be in little clusters of 4 sitting on the train side by side, all of them doing this, holding their PSPs. You go to McDonald's, 4-person tables, 4 people playing, and the whole restaurant would just be groups of 4 people all sitting down on PSP playing 400 Monster Hunter hunts together on like ad hoc Wi-Fi. It was amazing. So what's the appeal of this game? Well, one is the depth and the fact that it's kind of an obtuse game, not quite to the degree that Dark Souls is, but it takes a while to learn your way around, and there's a lot going on. Like
nuance.
You said, let's talk about the things going. You mentioned cooking meat. You can't just go out and you're going to starve to death, but you can't just cook the meat. You also got to keep the stamina up. But you're not just controlling the stamina, you're also controlling the length of the stamina bar. So one, you can't run out of stamina in combat or running around, but also you have to keep eating to keep the bar refreshing your even potential, like sort of like refilling the number of heart containers you have all the time while managing your health, while managing your weapons, which constantly get more dull. So you have to sharpen them. So there's this incredible number of things you're watching. And by the way, things are trying to kill you and you're gathering assets all the time. It looks, when you watch it, like the most boring thing you can fathom, but it's so involved.
There's something to it. I mean, if you're trying to explain to somebody who's never played a Monster Hunter why it works, it's that it has, even if it's obtuse, even if you can't understand it at a glance, it has all the hooks you want in a video game.
It does.
Where you are feeling more powerful, you are leveling up, you're getting your ass kicked in one fight, but then you've learned something about that monster. So the next time you go, there's that, the satisfaction of going back to the job board, turning it in, getting another one, rolling back out. It's
upgrading the equipment, getting that slightly better, because this is a game of inches. The victory and defeat line for you against most monsters, especially the first time you beat them, is usually a hair. It is tension. Some of these hunts can go on for 30, 40 minutes. You're chasing this immense piece. The monsters there's jillions of them, and they're all unique. And when I say unique, they don't look unique or have a unique roar. They are nuanced and have tells. It's not like there's going to be a flash when the monster's going to do something. It's sort of like Mike Tyson's Punch-Out multiplied by 20. Every tell is extremely subtle and reveals the monster might do one or two, and you're watching for just the perfect perfect moment to try this, but then it's going to be a different tell immediately. And every monster has different patterns and different characteristics. And they're not stupid. If they're getting beat up, they'll just run away and find their lair and go rest. Or they'll call their friends and other things. And it's just, it treats you with, it's again, much like Dark Souls, it treats you with so much intelligence. It's like, oh, you're a smart guy. You're going to figure this out.
Yeah.
And when you figure it out, I'm going to reward you with something compelling. I'm going to give you something else really neat. Monster Hunter players will play the same Monster Hunter for hundreds and hundreds of hours. And that,
And like, that was the thing for me. My example with Monster Hunter, right? And like, when I got it, when I reviewed it, in terms of it, I didn't fall in love with it, but the hooks were there, the mechanics were there. And then what worked for me when I really appreciated it, I think in retrospect, was when I got Peace Walker. And it was like, you talked to Kojima about it and how much he took from that. I mean, not to mention that there are Monster Hunter levels in Peace Walker.
Yeah.
But I mean, the fact of, go and replay these missions over and over and over and over and over again, fight the same monsters. And don't get me wrong, I think Peace Walker is a dumbed down Monster Hunter in terms of what you're doing at enemy level and stuff like that.
That makes sense.
But it's there in terms of like, oh, right, this is what I was doing in Monster Hunter, that I was getting friends together, going out on these missions. We were taking these things out. We were starting to feel more and more badass and getting better and better, and then coming back and kicking this thing to shit. You know what I mean? They're getting drunk at the bar.
Yeah, I love that you brought up Peace Walker, because Peace Walker is an example of one of about 6 jillion Japanese games in that period of time that decided they need 4-player simultaneous multiplayer.
Yeah.
Because Monster Hunter did it, and everyone aped it. I mean, there were accusations floating around that Dragon Quest IX had 4-player parties because of Monster Hunter. I think that's a bit of a stretch, honestly. Because,
I would have been very upset if they did that.
But Monster Hunter is. Let's talk about that multiplayer element. I don't play a tremendous number of non-couch multiplayer games. I really prefer to play with people in the room. It's because I'm old and senile. But Monster Hunter is a delightful online experience because it is purely beautifully cooperative in a way that very few games are. Everyone's doing their role and yet doing their own thing at the same time. There's not one way for each person to play the fight. It's not like tank guy's always going to do the same thing.
I'm not the healer class. I'm not this.
No, I have a lot of options, and at any second in the fight, I'm going to do something completely different and useful. And my teammates, even if we've worked together a lot, are not necessarily going to be able to predict the best thing I can do. And likewise, they're going to surprise me at moments when I think all is lost. This guy's going to come through and save us. At moments when everybody else is on the ground, I've got a chance to leap on the monster's back and be a hero. And Generations, which is the new one, I think is the most accessible Monster Hunter there is. It's first, the controls work wonderfully, especially with the new 3DS, because you don't have to worry about using the touchscreen anymore. You've got to, or you use it, but because Monster Hunter has, Lord, does Monster Hunter have buttons? Monster Hunter has, it's not just one panel where you're using fake buttons. You actually program, you customize multiple lower screen panels.
Oh my
that
God.
You switch between while you're playing.
So what do all the buttons do?
Oh my gosh, there's buttons for everything. There's buttons for map controls and locking on and slower maps and outer maps and items and special moves and finding things and accessing it. And it's designed in such a, like, there's little subtle, they do things that just seem so frustrating. Like, okay, first off, the pacing thing where you're committed to a move, much like Dark Souls, once you're in the move, you're semi-committed. There are ways to combo out, but you have to learn all those. It's very nuanced and subtle. But then you'll have stuff like, if my sword's out, my longsword, I can't use items because my hands aren't free. I've got to sheathe, get to the item, use the item, redraw, which in the middle of a fight is terrifying. And you have to time everything. You're thinking 20 seconds ahead all the time. That bottom panel helps a lot with arranging those complex sequences and moves you need to do. Yet the base attacks are only 2 buttons, but hitting those 2 buttons in various combinations, depending on the weapon you're using and the style you're in, gives you ridiculously wide move sets that are all tailored for specific situations. You can play Monster Hunter for 100 hours with one of the many weapon sets. Switch off and you're starting at square one on learning how to use those things again. And I love that about it. Wow, I talked a long time.
It's the everlasting gobstopper.
Yeah.
I don't know. Colin, I mean, does this ever held any appeal for you?
No. I played one Monster Hunter game a long time ago. It's just not for me. What's funny is that there's certain games that are informed in some way by Monster Hunter that I actually enjoyed quite a bit. But Monster Hunter to me was always so unnecessarily deep that I don't mind deep games. I love Civilization, for instance. The game is fucking incredibly deep, but it's because I can just sit there and like think about it. You know, like it's not active. Civilization is, I think, one of the deepest games there is, but it's a passive game.
Yeah.
So I can like literally be like, I don't know what I want to do. Like I have to think about this for fucking a half an hour now. You know, like look around the map and like all this kind of stuff. And Monster Hunter didn't give me the two Monster Hunter type games, and I say type in quotes because one of them really isn't very much like Monster Hunter. One of them is very much like Monster Hunter. Is Soul Sacrifice. Really liked that game, and that game was informed. The combat is somewhat informed by that, but it's a much more lonely game. Freedom Wars is the big Monster Hunter game on Vita that I thought was excellent, and that was because there was a meta story to it that Monster Hunter doesn't have, and I love the idea of like whittling down your years and all that kind of stuff. And you know, Freedom Wars was just a very good game, and probably the last great Vita AAA game. But again, it wasn't nearly as deep as Monster Hunter. It was deep. Freedom Wars is deep, but it's not as deep and it's not as hard as Monster Hunter.
I don't want people to get scared off of Generations because they've done a better job easing you into it. Again, I'm not a Monster Hunter expert by a long shot. I'm just a guy who likes playing it. But I sat down with Altano at IGN, and who's never played one. And in the course that we did this little video series about teaching him to play, and he picked it up quick. They've made it so much easier to learn the basics than it used to be. And by the end of it, he was holding his own against things he had no business being that good at after that short a time, because they're much, much better at some of the tutorializing. And if you're actually willing to go, and I realize tutorials are irritating, but they found a good balance between obnoxiousness in the tutorials and getting you in and doing something cool and fun right away. This is the best time to jump in there's ever been. I don't think Monster Hunter is ever going to be huge here. I think that's more of a Japanese phenomenon. That's just really kind of like the way I don't know, the way soccer hasn't been big here for a long time. But that doesn't mean there's not a lot of value to be found there if it's something you enjoy.
It's an extremely important game, and that's what I always said back when Vita came out. For the first 18 months or so, there were a lot of rumors that Capcom was going to put Monster Hunter on Vita, and I'm like, this is a very important moment for this handheld. It never happened, and I think I honestly think that's half of the reason why Vita never took off more in Japan. Now, Japan is still sustaining Vita almost single-handedly, but the fact that Monster Hunter never made an appearance on the handheld was a major injurious thing to it, especially because it was on 3DS. So
3DS getting Monster Hunter was a coup.
Yeah, it was Japan. A huge thing. It was a huge deal, and I think that Sony never really recovered from that. I think that there was assumptions that they were going to get it.
The PSP was not particularly successful in Japan the first half of its life until Monster Hunter came out. And that changed everything. There are not many legitimate killer apps in all the history of video games. In Japan, Monster Hunter was the killer app for that handheld generation, period. It was the reason people bought the handheld. There were people that was all they played all the time, and they just waited for the next one to come.
So Generations is the latest game.
Yeah,
correct?
Generations.
Okay, cool. And so you're saying that is it the best jumping in point, or is there another one?
No, jumping in Generations. That's So yes, I think Generations is where you start. You get your 3DS. If you don't have a Frankenstick, buy one. If you have a new 3DS, you don't need one. But you can play it without one, but I don't recommend it.
Then you're back to the claw.
Yeah. Otherwise, they use the bottom touchscreen for it, but it's just
no, that's even worse than the claw. Don't do that.
Yeah, that's
you could adjust the claw, but don't do that.
Any final words on Monster Hunter?
Play and have fun.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, this topic brought to you by Squarespace. Whether you need a landing page, a beautiful gallery, a professional blog, or an online store, it's all included with your Squarespace website. Greg?
Build it beautiful.
No, you want to hear a couple product features?
Build it beautiful.
Easy. Creating your website with Squarespace is a simple, intuitive process. You can add and arrange your content and features with the click of a mouse. It's also really cool that you get a free custom domain. Squarespace makes adding a domain to your site simple. If you sign up for a year, you'll receive a custom domain for free for a year. You got some beautiful templates. You can design a best-in-class online store with Squarespace award-winning templates, customizable settings, and more, all without a single plugin. They got 24/7 customer service support, so you can go online, talk to a real person. They always got people that are really there talking to you. No phone calls, though.
No
it's
phone
all
calls.
Online. This is 2016.
Nobody needs phones anymore.
Nobody needs
phones.
phones.
It's over landlines. Get
Phones
out of here.
don't exist.
Yeah.
That's what I heard. Build beautiful sites and all that stuff. Start your free trial today at squarespace.com and enter offer code Kinda Funny to get 10% off your first purchase. That's squarespace.com. Use the promo code KINDAFUNNY.
F you.
to get 10% off your first purchase. Squarespace, set your website apart.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Build it beautiful.